Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything about reprogramming your mind for positivity isn't just wrong, but is designed to be wrong?
Wow. That is a heavy opening question, isn't it?
It really is, and it's the core critical framework we're using today. We're looking past, simple self-improvement.
Right. We want to examine the sort of the economic function of all this mandated optimism.
Exactly. And we're drawing heavily from a critical text called The Self-Help Illusion, Critique of Internalized Governance.
Okay.
And this source, it uses that whole popular idea of reprogramming your mind for positivity, the stuff pushed by high-performance coaches, influencers like Brendon Burchard as its main target for analysis.
Got it. So our goal here isn't really to argue if being positive is like good or bad in itself.
No, not at all. It's to understand what purpose this specific framework serves. The bigger picture, the power structures.
Okay, yeah, because the source material we're digging into, it's pretty explicit about what the self-help industry claims, right?
It is. The claim is essentially your mind. It's chaos.
Yeah.
Inherently messy.
Needs to be tamed.
Exactly. Strictly mastered through these cognitive disciplines, all to achieve what they call perpetual positivity and high performance.
And high performance always translates to
Success. Capital S success. That's the promised land.
And, on the surface, that sounds pretty appealing, doesn't it? Like the American dream, but for your brain chemistry.
Who wouldn't want that perfectly controlled engine?
Yeah.
Tuned for peak success.
But the critique, it just throws cold water on that straight away. It argues this whole process.
Yeah.
It isn't actually about freedom. Not real freedom, anyway.
So what is it about, according to the critique?
Well, what's really fascinating is the claim that this framework isn't some neutral tool you pick up. It's actually an ideological construct, meaning it promotes a very specific kind of internalized control. And the way it does that is pretty clever, or maybe insidious.
How so?
By basically pathologizing normal human emotions,
Mm-hmm.
Sadness, frustration, anxiety. Especially anger, particularly anger that might be justified.
So feeling bad about something bad isn't seen as a signal anymore.
Exactly. It's reframed. It's not a message from your complex internal world. It's a personal fault, a bug in your programming that needs immediate fixing.
Okay, let's unpack that central claim right now because it's crucial. How does it actually matter to the system if I, the listener, am busy policing my own thoughts?
Right.
How does my internal struggle end up serving these external power structures?
Because this structure, this mindset, it acts as the perfect shock absorber for, neoliberal and capitalist demands.
Oh.
Think about it. If you are perpetually convinced deep down that all the obstacles to your success are internal.
My negative thoughts, my lack of discipline.
Yeah, exactly. A failure of your thought policing. Maybe you didn't do your gratitude journal properly.
Yeah.
If you believe that, you become a self-policing, compliant individual.
Okay, so all my energy goes inward.
All of it. Constantly optimizing yourself, tweaking your internal settings, instead of directing that energy outwards.
Outwards to maybe critique or challenge the systems that might actually be causing the problems.
Precisely. The toxic boss, the unfair market, the wages that never go up, all those external things that might genuinely be making you miserable, you don't look there anymore.
It just perfectly shifts the entire burden of failure, doesn't it?
Completely. If you're exhausted, stressed out, not hitting that peak success they promised,
That's my fault.
it's your fault. The individual who failed to master the mental tools the guru sold you, it's a neat psychological trick, really. A sleight of hand.
And that brings us right to this key distinction we need to keep in mind for this whole deep dive.
Let's hear it.
The difference between what genuine wisdom traditions often aim for, which is a liberated mind.
Okay, like free from delusion suffering.
Right, free from unnecessary suffering, from craving, versus the goal of this modern self-help framework, which is an optimized mind.
Optimized, like a machine.
Exactly. And the critique suggests this optimization isn't really for your enlightenment. It's about maximizing your productivity and making sure you fit neatly, compliantly, within a specific economic structure.
So it's the free mind versus the factory-tuned mind. Ready for work.
That's a great way to put it, ready for deployment.
Okay. So to see how this tuning actually happens, we need to look at the foundations they build it on, right?
Yes. Let's move into section 2. We need to take apart the 3 foundational truths or axioms that this whole method presents.
All right. Let's dismantle them. Where do we start?
We start with how these systems describe the mind before they try to reprogram it. Axiom 1, the myth of the blank slate mind. This is absolutely fundamental to the whole idea of reprogramming.
Right, the idea that you start empty.
The framework basically assumes you begin life as an unprogrammed collection of patterns of incidences, just, neutral void.
They paint the mind as this chaotic mess, just waiting for the guru to step in and upload the correct positive software.
And this is where, academic sources just immediately say, hold on.
Yeah, like pretty much any modern study in neuroscience, linguistics, sociology, it contradicts that instantly, doesn't it?
Completely. We are not neutral voids. We come preloaded with innate structures, biases, and crucially, massive cultural programming installed from the moment we're born, long before we even hear about self-help.
You mean things like our ideas about class or shame?
Exactly. Specific ways our language shapes how we even perceive reality. Our concept of time, how we feel about failure, our relationship with debt. That's all cultural software running deep in the background before we're even 5 years old.
So the mind isn't empty at all. It's already shaped, often by powerful external forces, some of which might be pretty oppressive.
Definitely. But the self-help framework has to maintain this illusion of the blank slate, because that specific ignorance serves a purpose.
What purpose is that?
Well, think about it. If the mind is already shaped by power structures, then the root problem might be external, right? Requiring collective action, social change.
But if the mind is just a blank slate filled with random chaos,
Then the problem is purely internal. Your fault. And the solution, something you have to buy.
It creates the problem unprogrammed chaos, so it can sell you the solution reprogramming.
Exactly. And at the same time, it conveniently hides the fact that your mind was already shaped by these external forces. It diverts your energy.
Away from challenging culture towards buying more internal fixes and policing yourself.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Which leads us neatly into Axiom 2. This one is maybe the most common bit of pop psychology out there, the oversimplified dual system brain.
Oh yeah, System 1 and System 2, Kahneman.
Right, but the version these frameworks use is drastically simplified. System 1, automatic, unconscious, fast thinking. System 2, conscious, rational, controllable.
And they always present System 2 like it's this neat little dashboard you can just operate.
And I love the dashboard analogy.
Yay.
Because it implies perfect access, immediate control. It sets up this philosophical trap.
The homunculus fallacy.
Exactly. The idea of a tiny little person, a fully conscious agent, sitting inside your skull, totally separate, calmly pulling the levers of your rational will.
But real cognitive science, as the critique emphasizes, has moved way past that clean split, hasn't it?
Decisively. Your System 2, your conscious rational thought. It's not separate. It's deeply influenced, constrained, often completely hijacked by System 1 processes.
Like gut feelings, biases, old conditioning.
All of it. Your emotional reactions, your history, they're all intertwined.
So here's the crucial breakdown for you, the listener. If you genuinely believe your System 2 is totally in charge, like a pilot in a cockpit,
Then any failure to be positive or productive or whatever the goal is,
can only be seen as a moral failure, a lack of willpower from that little pilot inside.
Can you give us a concrete example? How does that homunculus fallacy play out day to day?
Okay, think about something common like chronic procrastination.
We've all been there.
Right, so your conscious mind, your System 2, logically knows I need to finish task X for my job, for my success. It's clear.
Makes sense.
But System 1 may be driven by some deep-seated, conditioned fear of failure or past trauma around judgment, automatically steers you towards scrolling social media. The easy dopamine hit.
The distraction.
The self-help framework then tells you, force the dashboard, use your willpower, stop scrolling.
Yeah, just do it.
But your failure in that moment isn't really a lack of will. It's the fact that the automatic emotional conditioning running in System 1, the stuff these self-help systems conveniently ignore, is way more powerful in that instant than the logical instruction from your conscious mind.
So when you can't instantly overcome it,
You feel intense self-blame. It reinforces the narrative. You are flawed. You lack discipline.
and that failure, conveniently, send you right back to the industry for another tool, another seminar, another book.
To help you control the dashboard that was never really separate or fully controllable like that in the first place, it's a cycle.
Which brings us to the third leg of this wobbly stool, Axiom 3, the RWID mechanism.
RWID. Sounds technical.
It stands for relative weight, importance, and duration. And this is kind of the core logical engine they use to justify all the constant effort.
Okay, what does it actually say?
Almost laughably circular, really.
Yeah.
RWID states that the amount of relative weight, importance, and duration you give a thought determines how dominant it becomes in your mind.
Wait, so basically, thoughts you focus on a lot become habits.
Bingo. It's a truism. It's just a basic description of how neuroplasticity works. It's not some profound insight.
It's like saying the more air you pump into a tire, the fuller it gets. Well, yeah.
Exactly. The critique argues its real function isn't to explain anything, but to coerce you. By stating this obvious fact, they justify demanding this insane level of continuous, sustained mental vigilance.
You mean constantly monitoring?
Constantly. You have to perpetually monitor and control the RWID you assign to every single thought that pops into your head, all day, every day.
That sounds impossible for a normal human being.
It essentially is. And what happens when you inevitably slip up? When you miss a negative thought, a flicker of self-doubt, a flash of justified anger, a painful memory, and it lingers. It gains weight, importance, duration.
Then you failed, according to the system.
You failed. You're told that single moment of inattention allowed the wrong RWID to take root. And therefore, you must restart the policing cycle, but with even more intensity, more vigilance.
So the RWID framework basically creates an impossible standard, a standard of continuous focus that ensures you will always feel like you're falling short.
Precisely. It guarantees you remain perpetually indebted to the system that promises you control, because you can never perfectly meet the standard it sets. It sets you up to fail, then blames you for it.
Okay, so if those are the flawed foundations designed to manufacture self-blame, let's look at the actual methods they prescribe. How do they get you to police yourself?
Right. This is Section 3, the technology of self-policing, the practical how-to.
Let's get into it. Step 1 seems to be this constant watching.
Perpetual surveillance and cognitive redirection. And this is where it immediately bleeds into what we now commonly call toxic positivity.
Okay, so what's the instruction?
The command is for nonstop internal inspection. The sources literally tell you to frequently interrupt your day multiple times, pause everything, and ask yourself, what am I thinking right now?
Like an internal audit, constantly.
A regime of continuous, vigilant internal auditing, yeah.
And when you inevitably catch yourself thinking something negative, what's the prescribed action?
Critically, it's not to understand it, not to explore its roots or see if it's a valid signal. The command is to actively interrupt and redirect it immediately.
Like shut it down, force it out.
Violently force your brain to switch focus. Often they suggest using visualization. Picture a happy place, plaster over the negative feeling with some pre-approved positive alternative.
And this is where the critique sees a major functional flaw, right? Because it's basically just forced emotional suppression.
Exactly. It completely ignores the vital, functional, necessary warning value of so-called negative emotions.
Yeah, I mean, think about the human utility of these feelings. Grief, for instance. It's not fun, but it's a necessary process for integrating loss, for healing.
Fear alerts you to real danger in your environment. It keeps you safe.
And anger. Especially anger. Valid anger seems particularly threatening to these systems.
It really does. Think about it. If you feel justified outrage, say, about massive income inequality or climate change inaction or maybe exploitation in your own workplace, what does this framework command?
Redirect it immediately.
Immediately redirect that potentially world-changing anger into, okay, what are 5 things I can be grateful for right this second?
The message becomes, your dissatisfaction isn't a problem with the world, it's a problem with your personal vibration or your thinking patterns.
And that is the core systemic function, according to the critique. This process effectively disarms valid critique. It disarms anger, dissatisfaction, all the powerful emotions that fuel social and systemic change. By labeling them as purely personal malfunctions, that must be redirected internally. So you stop being a critical citizen, potentially demanding change. Perpetual self-manager, solely focus on polishing your internal state so you fit the required external metrics without complaint.
Wow. Okay, so that's step 1. What's step 2?
Step 2 moves from thoughts to actions. It's behavioral conditioning, which the critique labels performative authenticity. It's about what you do, regardless of how you feel.
The classic fake it till you make it.
That's the essence of it, yeah. You must perform positive actions, display positive emotional states, no matter how genuinely exhausted, stressed, or unhappy you might actually be feeling inside.
The framework literally says you have to be authentic over and over.
It does, which is kind of a contradiction in terms, isn't it?
It completely destroys the meaning of authenticity. If you're commanded to be authentic by performing a script,
It's just enforced performance. You're given the lines, the facial expression, the required high-energy mannerism, and you're told, execute this repeatedly until the mask becomes the face.
So it's creating a mandate for faking it, not feeling it. This sounds like the corporate mask.
Exactly. And think about the sheer psychological cost of maintaining that mask,
Yeah.
not just at work, but potentially 24/7 if you really buy into this.
And look at the specific roles this kind of conditioning prepares people for in, modern capitalism.
Oh, absolutely. It's perfect training for the high-pressure sales floor, where your enthusiasm has to be sky-high constantly, even if the targets are ridiculous.
Or customer service jobs, right? Where you have to maintain that relentless, cheerful, often saccharine smile while potentially being treated terribly, often for low pay. Your actual well-being is totally irrelevant to the performance requirement.
The systemic function seems crystal clear here. It grooms the compliant subject for roles demanding intense emotional labor,
Masking exhaustion, masking dissatisfaction.
all framed as personal growth or professionalism. You have to perform at peak level constantly, regardless of your real physical or mental state.
Okay, so surveillance and redirection, then performative action. What's the final step in this technology of self-policing?
Step 3 involves ritualized compliance. This is where the heavy lifting comes in intensive daily practices.
The homework.
Pretty much. The critique highlights two main components. First, the daily questions ritual.
What does that involve?
You have to ask yourself 5 extremely positive questions, and you have to do it 3 times a day, every single day.
But what kind of questions?
Things like, what can I feel deeply grateful for right now?
Yeah.
Or who do I love? Or how can I enhance my focus today? Always striding, always positive framing.
Okay, and the second component?
That's identity labeling. This involves choosing 3 keywords for your ideal self. Maybe present, excited, bold, and repeating them to yourself over and over and over.
It's like a mantra, but specifically chosen performance labels. Psychological tattooing, as you said earlier, forcing an identity that might feel completely alien to your actual state.
Right. And crucially, all this effort, all these rituals, are explicitly directed towards achieving a very specific kind of goal.
Which is?
Peak amounts of success and becoming a more mature, conscious, enlightened person.
But notice how quickly that language, maturity, consciousness, enlightenment, words with a deep spiritual resonance, gets hijacked.
Completely co-opted
Mm-hmm.
and redefined exclusively in terms of capitalist output, performance metrics, market success.
So the ritualization isn't really about spiritual growth. It's about turning yourself into that constant internal auditor, checking the boxes.
Making sure you meet the positivity and high-performance quotas dictated by the system, by the market, and if you dare drop the ritual for even a day,
Your performance might dip, your positivity might waver.
and the whole fragile edifice collapses, which, according to the gurus, just proves you were the problem all along for not sticking to the program rigorously enough.
Wow, okay, we have spent a lot of time really taking apart the mechanics of this thing.
We have rigorously dismantling the machine.
So now let's pivot. Let's look at the alternatives. Because the point of this deep dive isn't just to tear down, right? It's to offer you, the listener, maybe a different path away from this coercive structure.
Absolutely. We need to contrast this self-help framework with established, arguably healthier wisdom systems.
But first, let's just quickly nail down that core assumption driving the whole self-help model we've been dissecting. The critique calls it the neoliberal presupposition.
Right. Which basically assumes constant striving, constant self-improvement, constant comparison, and defines success entirely in capitalist performance terms.
And anything else, like just being content, being quiet, not constantly hustling, gets subtly pathologized. It's framed as laziness, apathy, a lack of ambition,
All your energy gets aggressively funneled towards personal optimization for the system.
rather than ever questioning or critiquing the system itself.
Okay, so keeping that presupposition in mind, now look at how starkly this forced striving contrasts with, say, major streams of Eastern philosophy.
Yeah, the self-help model demands we perpetually crave positivity and violently reject or suppress negativity.
Which is, the direct opposite of core Buddhist tenets, isn't it?
Absolutely. The goal in Buddhism is often framed as non-attachment and the cessation of dukkha, which we usually translate as suffering or unsatisfactoriness.
And where does dukkha come from?
Precisely from craving. Craving things we don't have, and also having aversion to things we do have, like unpleasant feelings.
So trying to force yourself into a state of permanent positivity.
It's just swapping one craving for another. You're replacing maybe the craving for money or status with an equally intense craving for a specific internal emotional state.
You're just attaching yourself to a new, impossible ideal.
Which guarantees continued suffering, because you'll inevitably fail to maintain it. And that failure ensures you remain a customer needing more solutions.
Whereas the enlightened mind, in that tradition, is supposed to be the one that sees reality clearly, including the reality of suffering, the reality of temporary negative states without getting swept away or needing to deny it.
This self-help model basically demands you lie to yourself about reality, constantly.
And if we shift perspective slightly, maybe look at Taoism.
The entire framework is completely antithetical to the core Taoist concept of wu-wei.
Effortless action, acting in accordance with the natural flow.
Exactly. Moving like water, minimal friction, aligning with the way things are.
And this self-help system, it demands the polar opposite. Forceful, controlled, gritted teeth striving, constant internal struggle.
Applying System 2 brute force against the natural currents of your own feelings and thoughts. It's like insisting on rowing your canoe directly upstream into a raging current for 20 hours a day, purely through rigid discipline, and then wondering why you're exhausted and getting nowhere.
True liberation, from a wu-wei perspective, would be more about understanding the currents, maybe building a better rudder, learning to navigate gracefully.
Not forcing yourself into a constant, exhausting fight against the river itself until you collapse.
Okay, let's bring it back west. Let's look at Western critical thought and psychological integration. These also offer really powerful contrasts to simple thought policing.
Yeah, sometimes you see Stoicism kind of misinterpreted, don't you? Like it was just early self-help about controlling thoughts.
Right, but the critique highlights a really crucial difference. The Stoics were primarily focused on their sphere of control, their judgments about things, and their own virtuous actions.
They talked about accepting impressions, didn't they? Accepting those initial System 1 thoughts or feelings without immediate judgment or panic.
Exactly. They didn't freak out when a negative thought popped up. They recognized that those initial impressions, the emotional flare-up, aren't entirely within your immediate voluntary control.
Whereas the self-help system screams, repress, redirect, now.
The Stoics said effectively. Okay, observe that impression. Is it based on reality? Does reacting to it serve virtue? Then choose your reasoned response. It's reflection, not frantic repression.
Their goal was tranquility, through reasoned action and acceptance, not through forced, coerced enthusiasm.
And this connects directly to maybe the perspective that this self-help model actively works against, perhaps even fears the most, Jungian psychology.
The goal of wholeness, which requires shadow integration.
Explain the shadow briefly.
In Jungian terms, the shadow is basically the unconscious dumping ground for all the parts of ourselves we've judged unacceptable. The qualities, emotions, impulses we think are negative or weak or shameful, and so we suppress them, hide them away, even from ourselves.
So if you're diligently following the self-help mandate perpetual surveillance, cognitive redirection,
you are actively, constantly shoving more and more of your authentic self into that shadow. Your grief, your sadness, your anger, your doubt. It all gets repressed.
So you're not integrating, you're fragmenting yourself.
Exactly. You're striving for this artificial, performative light, but the hidden cost is that you're making the unacknowledged darkness, the shadow, bigger and more powerful.
And that unintegrated shadow inevitably is going to cause problems, isn't it? Internal chaos, maybe breakdowns, cognitive dissonance.
Of course, which naturally the self-help system will then blame on your lack of discipline in policing your thoughts.
Forcing you back into the cycle. Buying more tools to control the very darkness you created through suppression in the first place.
True psychological maturity, Jung would argue, requires acknowledging and integrating the whole self, warts and all, not just slapping on the present excited, bold labels and pretending the rest doesn't exist.
Okay, we're reaching the synthesis now.
Yeah.
Let's tie all these threads together, the flawed axioms, the policing methods, the contrast with other philosophies, and look at the bigger picture of power dynamics.
Yeah.
What are the ultimate deceptions being sold here?
Deception number one, according to the critique, is framing negativity as a malfunction, seeing it not as a signal, but as a bug. This is essentially like amputating your own emotional warning system.
That's a powerful image, amputating the warning system.
The critique draws these really interesting parallels to, say, historical religious doctrines of sin. Think about how, throughout history, Perfectly natural human states or impulses, maybe ambition, curiosity, sexuality, even just needing rest, were framed as moral failings.
Like the deadly sin of sloth, right, which pathologized just being content or needing downtime.
Exactly. The modern secular parallel is framing your dissatisfaction with systemic injustice, or even just your natural emotional ups and downs, as a personal, moral, or cognitive flaw. A flaw you must correct through intense internal self-discipline.
And the cost of that, the cost of freedom.
It's devastating. If you amputate your emotional warning system, if you learn to instantly distrust and suppress your own feelings of outrage or grief about injustice, you lose the capacity for effective collective critique.
That feeling becomes a private problem.
Your valid anger about inequality gets transformed into a personal malfunction, a problem with your RWAD that needs immediate internal redirection. The system loves it when you turn your outrage into a private gratitude exercise.
Okay, that's deception one. What's the second major deception?
The promise of permanent positivity. This, the critique argues, is just pure consumer psychology packaged as enlightenment.
How so?
It connects directly to the concept of the hedonic treadmill from consumer capitalism studies.
Ah, the idea that we adapt to good things quickly.
Right. The treadmill ensures we're always a bit dissatisfied, always needing the next hit. You buy the new car, you get a temporary happiness spike, but very quickly you adapt, revert to your baseline emotional state, and start wanting the next thing to get that feeling again.
So how does self-help use this?
The positivity industry sells the impossible dream. Permanent peak happiness, constant positivity. But because that promise is fundamentally impossible, the human brain isn't wired for unchanging states. It needs variability, your inevitable failure to achieve that permanent peak.
Is always framed as your personal flaw. Never a flaw in the impossible promise itself or the system selling it.
Never. This constant focus on your internal failure forces you, the consumer, back into the cycle. Buying the next book, the next course, the next guru's secret, always searching for that mythical permanent peak state that never arrives.
It's an endless psychological cage designed for
Continuous financial extraction. Keep the customer dissatisfied with themselves. Keep them buying solutions.
So when we look at this whole framework through the lens of, say, critical theory, Michel Foucault comes to mind.
Absolutely. It perfectly exemplifies what Foucault called the technologies of the self.
Explain that briefly.
Foucault's insight was that modern power doesn't just rely on obvious force like police or prisons. A key way order is maintained is by getting individuals to internalize societal norms, the demands for productivity, positivity, constant performance.
So we willingly police ourselves.
We willingly police our own subjectivity. We manage our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to conform to the demands of those external power structures, the state, the market, whatever. We become, in effect, volunteer administrators of the system's demands inside our own heads.
So the central lie being peddled here by the positivity industry is
That freedom comes through the complete domination of your own mind, specifically for the purpose of optimizing yourself for the system. That real self-mastery is this perpetual, exhausting, internal struggle to force your feelings to match external demands.
and the counter-narrative, the liberating truth.
Is the radical opposite. It suggests true liberation doesn't start with more internal policing. It starts with understanding and recognizing the external forces that have already shaped your mind, your culture, your class background, the economic pressures of capitalism.
In that,
And then directing your critical energy outwards, not towards endless, exhausting self-optimization for the system, but towards questioning, challenging, and maybe even dismantling the external structures that create the frustration and demand the constant performance in the first place.
you stop trying to optimize the self to fit the system.
And you start questioning the system itself.
So this whole edifice, this reprogramming your mind, it's not really self-improvement in a neutral sense.
The critique argues it's highly sophisticated, internalized governance, self-management in the service of external powers.
So the final analysis, the takeaway.
Is that this self-help paradigm is brilliant in a way. It convinces you, the individual, that the bars of your psychological cage are entirely internal, that the key to freedom lies in a lifetime of disciplined self-scrutiny to perfect your behavior inside that invisible cell.
But the radical alternative.
The move towards genuine liberation is recognizing that the cage door, the bars, they were largely built by external forces. And the real task isn't just endless self-mastery within confinement, it's collective awareness and the dismantling of the confining structure itself. And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question, Mo. Knowing what you know now, what's one small rebellious act you can do this week to reclaim a piece of your own cognition from the positivity police?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.